See, Trustee Gandsey, you're not the only one. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Village of Bartlett Committee of the Whole meeting for October 18, 2022. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to again please call the roll.
Trustee Daney?
Here.
Gandsey?
Here.
Gunstein?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
Laporte?
Yes, here.
Sawansky?
Here.
President Wallace?
Here. First item we have on the committee meeting this evening is the Building and Zoning Chairman Hopkins.
Thank you, President Wallace. We have one item on our agenda tonight, and that's 2250 Graham Truck Storage and Repair Facility. The petitioner is requesting to modify the special use permit for a planned unit development, amend the Bluff City Industrial Park preliminary PUD plan and general site plan to allow truck repair and truck and trailer storage on 10 acres in the Bluff City Industrial Park. The final PUD plan for Graham Truck Terminal identifies two buildings, one 24,000 and the other 25,000 square feet, and 156 space truck and trailer parking lot sharing a single curb cut on Graham Street. The annexation agreement for Bluff City Industrial Park, approved by Ordinance 2003-98, listed automotive services, including truck repair, as a prohibited use. The petitioner is proposing an amendment to the annexation agreement and Ordinance 2003-103 to classify automotive services as a special use, not a prohibited use, in the list of surfaces used for the Bluff City Industrial Park. And pending approval of the amendments, a special use permit to allow automotive service, including truck repair. The Planning and Zoning Commission held the required public hearing, reviewed the petitioner's request, and recommended approval at their meeting on October 6, 2022. With that, does staff have anything to add?
The only thing I'd like to add is that this will require a public hearing at a future village board meeting to amend that annexation agreement.
Is there any questions from the committee?
Why was that use permit prohibited back in 2003?
The list of uses, some were pulled from the B4, some were pulled from the I1 and I2. We're thinking because it was close to the detention area to the east, that it was possibly considered a more less desirable use, but after seeing some of the development on there, I think it makes more sense that this is really in line with what the development's been out in the industrial park.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of tax revenue can you estimate from a truck repair facility? Do we have any idea? Okay.
I do not know.
Yeah.
And the reason why this says that for the surface uses, Bluff City Industrial Park has a number of uses that are for subterranean. For when the mining ceases, there are uses that are allowed and special uses and prohibited uses under the ground as well.
So you're going to put a water park there?
Yes.
Any other questions from the committee? So we'll send this on to the village board for a final vote. That's all we have under building and zoning tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Community Economic Development, Chairman Gandsey.
Actually, I'm going to take this one because it falls under Public Works.
Oh, my.
Once we get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
Dan has prepared a PowerPoint presentation. Next month, we will be presenting our capital program budget and thought it was appropriate to provide background information on our infrastructure and asset management. The village's core infrastructure consists of the village hall, the police department, Bartlett Hills, Public Works, et cetera. 147 miles of roads and parkway trees and streetlights, 30 miles of bike paths, 220 miles of storm sewer and detention ponds, 160 miles of sanitary sewer, 21 lift stations and wastewater treatment facility, 200 miles of water main and fire hydrants, 3 pump stations, and 7 water towers and reservoirs. All of the infrastructure that we have available to provide the various services to the residents, streets, water, sewer, etc., has a life cycle. The life cycle can vary depending on material, weather, and environment, soil conditions, etc. It's up to us to monitor and determine when maintenance and/or replacement is necessary. Using best management practices, we look at ways to extend the life of the infrastructure. For example, crack filling and pavement preservation, sewer lining, etc. Our presentation will focus on streets, water, and sewer, but hopefully you will have a better understanding of what the village is responsible for maintaining and costs associated with them. By managing our assets, we are able to make informed decisions to deliver quality services to the residents of Bartlett. Now I'll hand it over to Dan for additional detail.
Thank you, Chairman Laporte. We'll get right into it. I've been attending several seminars and training sessions on infrastructure and asset management, and then I actually went to one recently and was able to steal their presentation and for these first few slides. I borrowed, right. Just take a minute and think about when you wake up, all the infrastructure that you touch throughout the day. You wake up, you go to the washroom, you take a shower, you jump in your car, you go to work, you drive on the streets. If it's dark out in the morning now, you got street lights. If it's raining, you're counting on that storm sewer to drain away so you don't get flooded out. All those things are assets that the village has and has to maintain. We're not in this alone. The whole nation is dealing with this, and the American Society of Civil Engineers does a report where they evaluate the infrastructure of the United States, and you can see we're at a C- in the United States, which isn't very good. Here's a breakdown of the various infrastructure areas. You can see between the buildings and dams and bridges. We've seen the reports where bridges, like out in Minnesota, where they had to collapse. All those things, we are behind and we need to maintain them. What is an asset? When you think of assets, don't just look at the infrastructure that I just talked about as far as the roads, the streets, the sewers, but also it's all of us. We have to take the information, have the financing to be able to maintain it, and then put it on a program where we can try to keep up with maintaining it so that everyone can enjoy it. Asset management, just as I said, it's everyone working together as a board, setting goals, as staff and financing and public works, everybody working together to see what we have, plan on what the life cycle of, whether it's the buildings, the roads, the sewers, the water infrastructure, and then putting a plan together to try to make sure that we're not falling behind. And that's exactly what it is, about making good decisions at the right time. Because if you fall behind, then you're always reacting, and we're trying to get proactive as much as possible. So now I'm going to get into, we talked a lot about the infrastructure. Now I'm going to hit on the main ones. The first one being our streets. We got 147 miles of streets. It's about $350,000 per mile. By doing our crack filling and our corrective asphalt material applications and that, we're hoping to get beyond 20 years, but an average is 20 years. Sometimes you only get 15 years. But we're striving for 20 years by doing all those things. You can see that what we should be doing based on the number of miles we have, somewhere around 7 miles a year, which is closer to 2.5. Our MFT funds right now are only 1.65, so we're a little bit behind in that avenue. What I'll point out on this, you can see we took the last 10 years of roads that we've done, and you'll see a big bump in 2012, 13, and 14. We did 29 miles, 33 miles, and 19 miles. We did a $10 million bond in order to get caught up on roads. So that's an avenue that you can use, is you can go out the bond. The problem with bonding is they're 20-year bonds, so if you don't get 20 years out of the road, you're paying bonds that you're already having to go back and resurface. So you got to kind of evaluate that. Hopefully our extra steps to extend the life. It goes beyond 20 years. Bike paths. We just recently went through the bike plan. We have currently 30 miles of bike paths. That bike plan had an estimated additional 34 miles. You can see where these costs are. It's roughly $75,000 for a simple grind and overlay of the asphalt path. Based on that, we should be doing about 1.5 miles. Right now, we're trying to do a lot of that in-house. We're not doing 1.5 miles in-house. We would need help from contractors most likely to do that. So those prices are more contractor pricing. But you can see, the more bike paths we add, the higher those costs go on. I've been preaching, and during the plan, I've been preaching, we need to maintain what we have first, and then start looking at adding from there. But we need to try to get a grasp of maintaining what we have. Storm sewer. Some towns have gone to a storm utility because right now it's an unfunded utility. But you can see we have over 200 miles of storm sewer in town. Most of it is concrete pipe, which is good news because it lasts a long time, but it doesn't last forever. And we do have corrugated metal pipe, as I've talked about a previous topic on Munger Road, where those pipes are starting to deteriorate to the point where we're getting collapsing. We had an issue earlier this summer on Newport. You might have saw the lane closed there because we found the pipe corroded, and we did a temporary measure, but you'll see next month when we bring a capital program forward, we're going to have some bigger stormwater projects that are on our list because we're starting to see some deterioration. Sewers, we're actually doing pretty good. We've talked a lot about sewers over the last several years. But this map shows all the lining that we've done. We've done quite a bit. Our current budget is about $700,000 a year. We got 160 miles. According to this, if you go off of the life cycle, we should be at about 400,000, but we know we're behind. We're trying to get rid of all those clay pipes that we're starting to see collapsing, get them lined, they're renewed, and we should have a renewed life of 50-plus years. In addition to all the sewers, we've got the wastewater treatment plant that's currently under construction, along with 21 lift stations and all the force mains associated with those. Those take maintenance. We've been doing quite a bit of restorations on the lift stations lately. If you've been out on West Bartlett Road in the lane closure, that's one of them. We have a lift station right by Maryville. They're replacing the force main because we were starting to have that force main pop on us. And the lift station, once again, delays. We're not getting pumps until March of next year. So right now they're trying to get the force main in so that when pumps come in, we'll be able to just switch over and have a new lift station and new force main. Water main. I did a little bit more information on the water main side of things because we had the information available. Hopefully it puts it in perspective. We have a new software where we can put in the information, we can run different scenarios, financial scenarios. What we did is we took the water main that was installed in the village of Bartlett based on when subdivisions went in. When did Bartlett grow? 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s? This is, you can see right from there, this is length of pipe that was installed. So you can see the big boom came, we installed all that pipe, or developers installed all that pipe. Overall, we have about 200 miles of water main. I think I've said this before, it costs about $1 million per mile. We hope to get around 60 years of life. That comes out to about 3.3 miles per year if you're trying to stay up. And that's about 3.3 million. Right now, we're doing about $1 million a year, so we're a little bit behind there. But The project we're working on right now by the golf course, that's a new water main, and we're actually doing our first lead service replacements. That's another item out there that we have out there that we need to address per the EPA, removing those lead services. And this was our kind of our first sample to do that. But with this financial software we have, now you can see if you put in the life cycle of a water main of that 60 years, you can see all that growth that we saw in the 70s, 80s, 90s. You can see in the 40s, 50s, 60s where it's going to hit. And what we're trying to do is try to balance those peaks. You can see there's a stretch in there where you would need to spend about $7 million a year. Based on if we could get to a program that is right around 3 million, we could be able to flatten that curve and be able to stay ahead. You have a little bit of catch up because we're a little bit behind, but you would be able to catch up. And then you just kind of keep going because you know you replace it, it's going to start that cycle all over again. But that kind of gives you a horizon of when you start looking at 60 years. I mean, a lot of us won't even be here then, but 60 years out, Bartlett's going to be here. So we need to be continuing to look forward to make sure that the infrastructure is, you know, maintained moving forward. We talked about the hydrants. There's over 2,000 hydrants, so that, what is it called? What was it called? Art on Fire or whatever it was. We got lots more hydrants we can have the artists come in and paint. I thought it was a great program. It was far exceeded expectation. I think we had 130 hydrants. We got 2,000 more to do, so get to work. We also have water towers. You've seen those. Those are not cheap to paint, but paint is critical because if it rusts out, then you have serious issues. So we need to keep up on the painting to extend the life of those towers. So that's why you'll see in our capital program those towers being painted. This was based on the water. I wanted to give you a perspective. This is from that software we have. This has the inputs of all the revenue and then our capital program operating costs. You can see my pointer, the black dotted line and the red dotted line. That's our range of where we'd like to keep the fund. And then the black line that kind of goes up and down is where we're at. So you can see we're hovering in that range, which is good. However, if we are to get to where we would like to be, you can see it drops off pretty quick. So what does this mean? It means I think we're doing a good job. We are doing capital replacements. Can we do more? Yes. Should we do more? Yes. But it all takes money, right? So as long as we're looking at it and we're keep going uphill, rather than falling behind, we'll get there, I think. We thought it was important. Actually, this was an idea when Trustee Ranke was still here. We had talked about it, and unfortunately, we didn't, he left, but we still thought it was beneficial for everyone to hear it because I think we talk about all these capital projects and all that, but hopefully it gave a little bit of a perspective of what is our end goal and why are we doing what we're doing. It's all about trying to just keep things moving forward, try to keep it from jumping from fire to fire and being proactive.
So a lot of what Dan showed you is aspirational, right? It's in a perfect world, if we could give all our funds to, maintaining infrastructure, that would be great. That would be the plan. And when we move into looking at the capital budget, we tend to, focus on what's coming in the next year. And we wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of see how it all fits together over a lifespan and take a real long view of why we may be recommending things in a particular year and can we move them or can't we move them and that balancing act that needs to be done. These are our core services, so we want to make sure that they're sound and that they're reliable, not just in the immediate, but going forward. So it was a big project and one I think that is good for us to, now that we've laid the groundwork to then refresh it as we go on.
I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's really encouraging to know that we are forward-thinking to 2044 and making sure that, you know, we can keep the lights on and the water running and our water towers don't fall apart. And, yeah, I think that's fantastic. Very good job.
And avoid having to make decisions in a crisis mode.
Yeah.
That's-
So, Dan, how long does a newly painted water tower, how long is that, like, lifespan of the paint on a water tower? Is there any new technology that we could be using so you don't have to redo them every whatever, so many years?
You hope to get about
You know, it's
15 years.
really expensive.
They are expensive. It's usually 10 to 15 years you want to start looking at that. I don't know that there's a new technology out there now with paints and everything else. Hopefully they do come up with something that lasts twice as long or whatever. But yeah, they're not cheap, but it is important to keep them covered so that we don't run into issues. If you've been by Schick Tower, that one's in need. It's got some rust showing through in that. So that's on the list, I think for next year, actually. But, I mean, Villa Olivia, I think that tower looks great now. I mean, it's refreshed and
Yeah.
should be good for a long time, so.
I think in my opinion, I would favor being more proactive if we need to bond out to make sure that everything is the way that residents expect it to be versus wait until people are yelling and saying my road is falling apart.
Right.
You know? I think that's important. And I've seen some roads now, and I texted or called you, and you said they're not scheduled for another 2 years. And I'm like, I don't think this road's going to last another 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, we just had our pavement evaluated, and we can share a map that we actually just did, where it does an evaluation on the pavement, and, yeah, we got some lower, it's lower than I thought, I guess. I thought we were doing a pretty good job, but there's some that we need to hit, you know. But it's also a lot of miles to take care of, too, so.
How are some of those issues monitored, like Munger Road? Does someone have to physically go out there and keep checking to make sure it's not going to just sink when someone drives over it?
That's what we are doing right now. We are actually out there today. We've been monitoring it. we've been measuring it now. It's dropped about a half inch over the last month and a half. I got pictures. I can show you what I'm talking about. I actually brought them. And unfortunately, the pipes that, you know, Country Creek, we have that project coming up. All the culverts along that stretch are also corrugated metal pipes. So we're starting to really look at all of them now because we know that those pipes have been in the ground for a long time and they're starting to show their age. So we're going to have to put a program together where we're addressing them. Some of them, I think, are at a point where we actually could line them. We have to evaluate the pricing of lining versus replacement, but they're not in bad shape. And if you line it, how much life do you get? So that's some of the evaluations that we'll look at. But I can show you, I mean, afterwards I can show you guys what this looks like. But it's something we're going to be watching, and I'd like to get through winter without shutting it down, but if it keeps dropping at that rate, we're going to have to shut it down. We're going to try to patch it right now to see if we can smooth it out, and if we keep the trucks off of it, then hopefully I think what's happening is, you know, there's holes in the pipe, so any traffic going over it, it's vibrating, and then the rocks are washing into where the pipe is. So as that stone washes in, the pavement drops.
Is there any reason why we aren't just replacing it right now?
Well, you have permitting and all that stuff. We would have to, I mean, we can do an emergency, like design build. If that's something we want to pursue, we could do that.
I think we should think about that.
I think we got to get it done as soon as possible,
That sounds
because
kind of
once winter comes and you got snow plows going down that trip.
Well, I mean, even if we started now, chances are we're going to be into winter, because you would have to, even if you did a design build, you're talking to a contractor and getting someone on board to put the design together.
Anyway, you know what
The critical thing, it's not so much getting the pipe in or the box culvert in, it's making sure you don't impact the drainage.
Yeah, so
And that's the biggest thing is because if you guys are familiar, Beaver Pond and all the issues we had there, that's where this all goes.
So we asked.
So I don't want to change anything to impact that, and we won't be able to change
I
anything.
think I saw
until the
Christie's
county
forehead
signs off.
split, yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that needs to get evaluated before we,
Yeah, we had Christopher Burke come out and take a look at it. If you remember Darren,
Aaron Olson was
Darren
out.
Olson, who's the guru of our entire system with Beaver Pond, he came out and took a look at it and is helping us figure out the way to solve the problem.
I don't know,
We will expedite it as much as we can, for sure.
I don't know where this particular pipe is on Munger. I'm assuming it's a little further north, the way you're,
North of the tracks.
okay.
Where the,
But if we, so, but Munger is our responsibility from Stearns to Army Trail?
Right.
So Wayne doesn't have any responsibility for even that southernmost portion there?
they are responsible, once south of Army Trail, that's Wayne.
Okay.
I do have a quick question regarding the water towers. I thought there was talk at one point that some of the water towers were either obsolete or being removed. Is that something that's still being pursued, and how many of them are needed?
So, right now, we had on the Oneida, we had evaluated, we're actually contemplating removing that tower. But we do have a future water tower in the works, which was originally part of the whole Lake Michigan transition. DuPage Water requires a certain amount of storage, and it, helps our whole system function, especially like when we have a big fire. We can accommodate that. So with Oneida going away, we want to build probably, that one's a 500,000 gallon. We're probably looking at a 1.5 million gallon. We were looking at possibly putting it near the Brewster Creek Business Park, or possibly replacing the Kent Circle Water Tower, which is a small tower. So those are things that we have in the works.
And what is the cost to paint one of those?
The paint, I want to say Schick is around 1.2 million. I think the reservoir at Stearns is about that one's on the ground, that's about 700,000. So they're not cheap.
Public Works just paint those?
Yeah, no,
You have another competition and just,
yeah, right.
Paint the water tower.
yeah. We'll give them a little more time.
Maybe we could, Paula had the idea of
Some
turning
bungee
it into
cord.
NASCAR, putting advertising on them, I don't know, that might
The
be
guy
an
with the
option.
fence, he paints.
Hey, Dan, are there any new technologies that would extend the life? So if a pipe was a 20-year life, can we pay a little bit more upfront and get new technology that might make it a 60-year pipe?
For pipes?
For anything, yeah, just in general.
Yeah, we evaluate, so like, every different piece has its life cycle, right? Concrete pipe lasts a long time. You'd have to look at the cost, like PVC right now, I mean, it's been in service for a long time. We still don't know what its true life is. Hopefully it's forever, but, does anything last forever? So we do look at all, and we weigh the, you can buy the highest corrugated metal pipe versus concrete. I lean towards concrete because the life cycle, if you start looking at the cost, yeah, corrugated metal pipe is cheap, but there's a reason why it's cheap, because it doesn't last as long. So if you do the life long-term, like the 100-year cycle, you're ahead when you go with like a concrete pipe or a concrete box culvert or something like that. So we'll be looking at trying to replace those with time. Or, like I said, there is an option to line them, which basically makes it like a PVC pipe, which would last a long time too, as long as it's got the structural capabilities as well.
And what was the cost to repaint one of the water towers? I was shocked when I heard this. I just want you to say this.
Villa Olivia, I want to say, was about 600.
Right.
500, 600.
500.
It's a smaller tower, but, yeah.
Can you believe that? Villa Olivia painted a water tower, $500,000.
Plus the lettering. Well, I think your presentation was great. And we talk about spending money on infrastructure, and our residents, all they hear is sometimes that we're spending money.
Right.
When you put it in perspective like you did, it shows them that we're responsibly planning, so we're not shocking them with large bills at a time, or
That's
large
what-
tax increases.
That was the goal, is to try to give you a perspective of how many miles we have and what it costs to maintain.
By the way, who calculated the mileage? I think they're off by 2 or 3%.
You have to talk to GIS, I get it all from them.
Thank you.
Do you put that online on the website then? Like people can see?
Well, it was in the packet, I mean, it can be put on there.
Yeah, I would just, before
That was
we
interesting.
adjourn, I would just reiterate that I think infrastructure is so important, and this was refreshing to take a look at, and let's just really be adamant about not falling behind on some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chairman Laporte. That's all. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee Daney, seconded by trustee Gunstein. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Daney?
Yes.
Gansey?
Yes.
Gunstein?
Yep.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Laporte?
Yes.
Swansky?
Yes.
We are adjourned.